Come on, y'all. Put your hands together for Shelley Williams. At this time, I just want to share, I'm going to ask a good friend of mine, Roger Martin Jr., to come up just for a second. And I want to kind of share a little bit about the purpose behind this and the reason I'm asking him to come. My name is, as you already know, I'm Minister Fred, and I'm going to ask him to introduce himself real quick.
I'm Roger Martin.
And Roger Martin and I are next door neighbors. Say neighbors, y'all. Neighbors. Come on now, say neighbors. All right, so we are neighbors, literally. And in 2016, 2017, originally when there was some disturbances, a lot of tensions between law enforcement and also the community. And that was a while back in 2016. Roger Martin, myself, and another pastor, Pastor Stigger, we decided that we wanted to be intentional about doing something for our neighborhood and for our city. So we began to reach out, and we started this initiative in 2016 called Love Thy Neighbor. We ended up collaborating with the chief of police. We collaborated with our mayor. We collaborated with several different leaders and so on and so on. And believe it or not, the Lord truly blessed, where a lot of the tension that was happening, beginning to build, was squashed. We really didn't have a lot of those extra things that we're seeing, but of course life happens. And so it was a major time in history, even in 2016. And here we are 4 years later, we're having to deal with some of the same things and then some new things. And so I wanted to Roger just to kind of just share his perspective on it. And then we're going to go right into our opening scripture and a prayer by Pastor and First Lady from the Rock Church. I always call him Pastor Rusty, but I got both from here, Pastor Rusty and Pastor Lisa. All right, so.
Well, one of the things, I think one of the significant things that I ended up getting out of that was the shirt. Because what I've learned is when you're wearing this shirt, you got to change your behavior. So, it's not as easy to get people the finger when you're wearing this shirt. It's not, and I've literally had these moments where, darn, I'm wearing the shirt today, and I can't do this or I can't, but it's been a great kind of accountability. I laugh a little bit about that, but it's just funny, the power of these words. I was walking over here today, 30 minutes ago, and two people walking by. I love that shirt. I get that all the time, and I tell them I love it sometimes. But there's a power in the words, and I guess that's, and even about today. Today is bigger than just a love thy neighbor get together, and that's what's important, because this is about, well, we're going to talk about what love looks like. Because love is real nice. It's a nice fluffy word, whatever. We just all love each other. Really? So if that's your thought, well, you're going to get pushed today, son. You're going to hear some things, whatever. We're going to talk about, Jesus got annoyingly specific about what love looks like. So this nonsense, everyone here, I know, everyone would say, I love my neighbor. No, you don't. All right. And you're going to learn where you didn't. Gosh, that was a strong word. Okay. Have fun.
So anyway, y'all give it for my man, Roger Martin. All right, at this time, I'm going to ask the Rusty, Pastor Rusty and fam to come on up and share. They're going to share a wonderful word and also do our opening prayer.
Awesome. It's so good to be here today. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, Luke 10, and Matthew 22, all three of those scriptures tell us this: to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your mind, with all of your strength, and all of your soul. And if we begin there, if we begin our process with loving God with all that he is, then he's going to teach us how to love. He's also going to teach us how we're not loving. And so when we can begin there, loving him with everything within us, that we're seeking first the kingdom of God, then he's going to absolutely tear down the issues in our life that we have, and he's also going to show us how to do it. And that is my prayer, and we are so thankful to be here today.
I'll say thank you to Pastor Whitlow and your vision. And you've been used by God for so many years now in our neighborhoods. And I thank God for you and in our city. You're a strong leader in our city, and I'm very grateful. But the passage today to read is 1 John 3, verse 18 through 20. Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. Our actions will show that we belong to the truth. So we will be confident when we stand before God. Even if we feel guilty, God is greater than our feelings, and he knows everything. I'm so glad that God takes us past our guilt and shame. You know, guilt is based on what we do or what we've done. Shame is based on who we are. He took the guilt and shame for us so that the things that we've done, even to one another, he said, Father, forgive them. He forgave us so we can forgive one another. He not only took the guilt of what was done, he took the shame of who we are. Because it's been shameful what we have lived in all of these years and how God is bringing things to a surface for healing and wholeness. And this whole gathering for love your neighbor, it takes an intentionality to love one another. Because that means we got to get to know each other. We don't want it to be flippant. And that's what the scripture says. It's not just love in word, it's love in deed. It's faith without works, James said, is dead. It's futile. It has no eternal significance in it. And I believe every gathering point from what God has been doing in our city, which we've come a long way, but we got a long way to go. What he's been doing within our churches and our pastors and leaders and within us as individuals. I believe if we'll continue to walk it out and say, God, we're in it for the long haul. We are in it to see change, and we're in it, Lord, to be a part of the change and be a representation of the change. So I just want to pray for us today and just thank God for this event, this gathering. Lord, I thank you that in the heart of Huntsville, we declare your greatness here. We declare, Jesus, you are Lord. That means you are in control, but you wait for us to submit and surrender to you. We don't know how to love. The only thing that we know is that you loved us. And you said that it's not that you first loved me, but I loved you first. And it's out of responding to that you teach us to love one another, to teach us to love our neighbor as ourself. Lord, the challenge has been, Lord, too often we've not seen ourselves the way you've seen us. Help us to see the value that you gave your life for us so that we could give our life to you and become a reflection of a love that you've poured out in us, that we can love one another as you have loved us and you gave yourself for us. Help us to do that. God, it's not as pastors or leaders, it's just as believers. And I thank you. I thank you for the leadership that is, Lord, in this city that has put this together today. We embrace each other. We embrace because you embraced us. God, teach us to love like you and to care like you and to love the city you've called us to be, a place of change. In Jesus' name, amen.
Come on, y'all. Let's put your hands together for Pastor and First Lady. And I want to say I appreciate you too, Doc, because in my work life, I work with youth and housing, and we do a lot of work together with our Boys and Girls Club, with a lot of our organizations, and we are grateful too. And so on behalf of housing, I say thank you, as well as No More Dirty. So come on, let's put our hands together again for the Pastor and First Lady. All right, so we're going to keep this thing going. Dr. Hobbs, I'm going to tell you about, come on up, Dr. Hobbs. This guy, gentleman right here, is an amazing person. because he has, when I first moved back here after going through Hurricane Katrina, that circumstance, and had started all the way from zero, this gentleman here was probably, I would say, there's two gentlemen that will come to this mic that have made such an impact in my life. And they were my neighbors even before I didn't know them. You understand what I'm saying? And so this Love Thy Neighbor initiative is so serious because it is truly about loving our neighbors. So I'm going to ask Dr. Hobbs to come and share in his own way. I'm going to wipe this mic and we'll be good to go.
Thank you. Wipe.
Hi, neighbor.
Hi.
Somebody grab my paper, neighbor. Let's do a little bit of a activity check. God is good.
All the time.
All the time.
God is good.
God is good. You know, I'm so humbled to be here. And many of you may recall I was a spokesman for the police department. And I will tell you, here in North Alabama, we are blessed. Amen?
Amen.
I'm not saying it's perfect, but when I see the rest of the turbulence that's going on, I think we're a little further down the road, Brother Pastor. Pastor Rusty, what do you think? I think we're a little further down the road. And when we do things like this, it just tells me we are. And I know my good friend, Captain Rice, is going to come up here and speak in just a few minutes. But I just want the folks here to know that our police department gets trained on discretion, on cultural diversity, on how to work things out. We intentionally, at the police academy, that Captain Rice and Chief McMurray allowed me to teach at, do that. And so that means a lot to me as a citizen now on being on both sides of that blue line. So with that said, I want to double tap being your neighbor here. Mark 12, 30 and 31. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all of your strength. This is the first commandment. And if we just stop there, maybe I could pull that off. But we got to go the extra mile. And the second is like this. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. And as you were saying, brother, put that shirt on, put these scriptures on every day. It's kind of hard to live it when you get cut off in traffic. Amen? But you really get tested. So what does these two verses mean to us here today in beautiful Huntsville? And like my granddaughter, she's 3 years old, and she keeps saying everything she'll say, my mother comb my hair every day. My mother puts my shoes on every day. So how do we do this every day? Every day. So every day we should love the Lord our God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength. And we got to practice that and remember that if we show the love to our neighbors like the good Lord wants us to, they'll reciprocate that. And we saw that through the storms of 2011. And we're seeing that now, if you're paying attention. In these turbulent times, I've often told folks that whoever you are, it's going to be amplified. If you're a person of goodwill that loves your neighbors, guess what? That's going to be amplified. But if you're a person not of goodwill, who don't really care about your neighbors, that behavior is going to be amplified as well. So keep that in mind. People are watching. And I will close with this. We are such an atypical community. And I love that. Well, what does that mean, atypical? I'd rather be typical. No, I don't want to be typical. I never was typical. Born to a black mom, white dad, 1960, out of wedlock in the deep south. There has been nothing typical occur to me. Amen? And I could not think of a better place to live an atypical life than in Madison County, North Alabama. It's such a very diverse place to live in every measurable category. And guess what? We know how to discuss issues and differences and come to workable solutions. So North Alabama, Huntsville, Hunts Vegas, we're throwing Madison. Stay atypical, stay loving, and we will grow and stay together. Bye, neighbor. Bye, neighbor. Can I get another neighbor up here? Come on, y'all give it up for my man Doc Hobbs. All right, so we're gonna keep this thing moving. There's another gentleman that is very intentional about seeing change, and
His name is Pastor Dexter Strong. And I'm going to ask him to come up and share, first tell who he is and his platform. Because again, we're talking about how to be good neighbors, not just the anthem and the mantras of what is a good neighbor, but how to be it in 2020 right now. So if at this time, why don't you put your hands together for Pastor Dexter Strong.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
This is a difficult moment. I think it's a moment where lamentation and hope stand in creative tension. And in order for us to move forward, we have to be honest. And that honesty requires us to do something that often is hard. We have to stand in discomfort, self-assess, and then decide how much are we willing to risk to do what is right. We hear a lot of words about healing. What healing requires is that you diagnose an illness, go procure the resources to cure it, and treat it until it gets better. Healing is an empty word unless it's backed up with action and a willingness to honestly diagnose the problem. July 4th, last year, the New York Times reported about Huntsville, Alabama. We are in the top we're in the top 5 cities for wealth inequality by racial lines. Now, for some of you, that statistic is startling. But for some standing here, this is a lived reality. I remember when I first moved back to the city in 2018, because I was taking on a job in public policy. I remember when Big Picture Huntsville was sending its plans all over the city. I remember it got to Lewis Chapel on Pulaski Pike, not far from where I grew up on the north side, the most stigmatized community in this city. They had one little blurb about Northwest Huntsville. It said, a community historically neglected. Who's in charge? Now, we can talk about loving our neighbor, but what love requires often is to have radical concern for people who typically we don't share spaces with, people who culturally are dissimilar from us, people who are not in our tax bracket, people who live on the side of town that typically get told that they're criminal. You know, those kids. I am one of those kids. I've done everything that people tell you to do. Did fairly well in school, went off to college, came back, moved home. And even still in this city, I face barriers that I shouldn't have to. And I'll let you guess the reasons why. My fiance and I can't go downtown without being denied entry here. And then when the diversity score of this city gets released, the person in charge of the city says, well, he's surprised. Ask any black person in this city if they're surprised that downtown sometimes is discriminatory. Jesus began his public ministry, according to the Gospel of John, by creating a whip, going into the seat of oppression, and overturning money changers' tables. Most of us out here consider ourselves to be Protestant, Protestant. And yet we're uncomfortable with confronting people who abuse their power and marginalize people who look like me. After Jesus marched into those temples, into the temple, overturned money changers' hand, Nicodemus, who was a ruler of the temple, came to Jesus by night and said, Rabbi, we know you sent from God. But he was a ruler of the temple. He was there that day. It's interesting how leaders can affirm the rightness of leaders who are pushing for change, but not stand with them in solidarity when they're doing it. Now, the question I have for y'all is, what are you willing to risk? Many of you sit in important seats of prestige. Will you leverage that to create meaningful change in this city? Many of you have the ear of our leaders. Will you push them to reallocate resources so that people that look like us and grew up where we grew up have a fighting chance to get the things it takes to meet life's demands? What are you willing to give up? There is this myth, a pervasive myth, that's not only pervasive in our culture, but it's pervasive in our culture, in our churches.
All right.
That we can accomplish change without giving up anything. What are you willing to risk? Are you willing to leave your comfort zone to challenge people to do what's right? We have this opportunity, this moment, where for whatever reason, the attention of this city is now fixated on these issues. For people like me who've been fighting for this all of their adult life, I want to be hopeful. But I've seen moments like this come and go. I've seen leaders get challenged to do the right thing and then wait out the protesters, wait out the outcry until they can fade back into a problematic status quo.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking you, especially if you are like me and you are Christian, part of the Protestant tradition.
All right.
The tradition which calls boisterously for justice. Will you not only love your neighbor, but will you love my neighborhood?
There it is.
Will you love my school?
Okay.
Will you love my wages?
Mm.
Will you love me when people criminalize me on the basis of my blackness?
Mm.
I don't have the words to prick your heart. Trust me, black people, from the moment we got here 400 years ago, we've used all the words we know how to use. I don't know what to say. I wish I had the words. But maybe some people out here already have the words. Will you use them? Who will you talk to? Where will you go? What will you do to create a more just and loving and compassionate society? Justice is love in social form. Are you willing to diagnose the sickness, get the resources it takes to get the cure, and work tirelessly to heal it? Or do we just want more kumbaya sessions, hoping that outcry dissipates again into a false, problematic peace?
Mm.
Thank you so much, Pastor Strong. And Pastor Strong, I want to say thank you because here's the deal. Part of this gathering is transparency, it's honest dialogue, it's honest truth, it's honest statements, and then there's honest solutions. And part of that is what we're here for to do as well. So let's give it again. I want to say thank you. And he's doing a lot of great things. And you know what? You didn't speak on one of the ways. Remember, we talked about solidarity Sabbaths. Could you come and share that so that we can share? That's one way we can do this in a very positive way.
Candid conversations are necessary right now.
So, a good friend of mine, Reverend Gregory Bentley at First Fellowship Presbyterian Church, together in partnership with REACH, the Citizens Coalition for Criminal Justice Reform, we started something called Solidarity Sunday. We called about 260 churches, asking them this Sunday to preach specifically against systemic racism, not just interpersonal racism, because I'll tell you a secret, especially to the white people out here. Y'all need to hear this. Black people don't care about whether or not you're nice to us. We have friends and family, people that I love, and if you don't like me, guess what? I got friends. What I care about is if you'll fund my school equally. What I care about is if my neighborhood has access to the same resources. Systemic inequality is about the system of laws, policy, and cultures, which on the long end exploits, but in the short term, absolutely neglects people of color. We want your churches to preach against it specifically and to partner with organizations who are putting together policy solutions to be presented to the Madison County Commission, to the mayor's office, and to the city council. Faith without works is dead. Please pray for an end to inequality. But do what Rabbi Abraham Heschel did when he was marching with Martin Luther King. Pray with your feet.
All right.
Come on now. There it is. Stay right there, brother. Stay right there. Stay right there. Stay right there. Okay. because it's so important. Come on, y'all, put your hands together for Pastor Strong.
All right.
So how can they get in touch with you? So because there's a lot of people watching this, and then will watch this tonight on the news and what have you. What telephone number or what website can you give them so that we can do that, and then we'll move on? All right, because you said reach, so you gave three different coalitions, which I definitely love working with, and I'm glad to be a part of in the way that I am. But there's a lot of people right here that may not know, and Pastor Rusty, you definitely want to connect that dot. And there's a few others here: Erica Fox, WJB, and some others. All right, so what's the number?
You can call me anytime. My number is 256-694-4243. The email address to get in connection with Reach is reachhsb@gmail.com, or you can email me, dextercstrong@gmail.com. Email me, and I'll say this too. Allyship is hard, and I know that. I'm a cisgendered man. And at times, I've needed people to be patient with me as I learn how to be a better LGBTQI ally, how to be a better woman ally, to become more feminist. And I'll let you know, if ever there's inequality happening in a community that doesn't look like mine, I will come partner and march with y'all too. Okay? All right. 256-694-4243. If you want, hit me up, text me. I'll lock your number in. Let's get to work.
All right, guess what I'm talking about. And that again is another way that we can be good neighbors. At this time, I want to ask a friend of mine, and this is a testimony from a friend of mine. I'm going to ask Dr. Timothy Howard to come up. We have a very unique, he has a very unique testimony, and we're not going to take a whole lot of time, but I think it's important. And let me say this while he's coming. Everybody, we have bottled water, ice cold, room temperature water. There's double tits over there. Why don't you wave your hands, ladies, over there? And then we also have a gift for everyone. A really nice gift bag. We had so much support from the friends. I mean, we have nice gift bags. So I want to make sure you get that and take that with you. And then when we finish today, we're going to do some other cool stuff. All right, this time, let's put our hands together for Dr. Howard.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pastor Dexter, that I get to follow you. Very kind. So now you get this old white dude up here. Let me just preface what I'm going to say by a quote from an Austrian psychologist in 1921. The opposite of love is not hate, but indifference.
Okay.
And that's the context I want you to hear what I'm going to say in. So Fred and I served together on a board here in town, serving some of our dear friends here in this city, and we've had a ball doing it. Well, there came an issue in actually a celebration in another ministry, but we both supported. And in that, Fred had brought one of his black brothers with him. And when I say black or white, I'm just talking color. Because our skin is different, and that's a beautiful thing that God has done, and I so appreciate that. So he brought one of his buddies with him. They came out of that meeting where, of course, as a white person, it just went way over my head. And he came to me because I was chairman of our board, and he said, Tim, there was this situation that happened that really hurt my brother. And it hurts me. And so I've written a letter now. I want the board, to endorse this, to say how troubled we are that you would make this kind of, and it truly was a nuanced thing, but it was the ears of people who had felt pain for years and years and years heard it. And those of us who have the indifference were like, yeah, that's not my problem. So it's okay. So Fred and I met, and I said, Fred, you're kind of overreacting. How's that for a... and we talked, and this is where I love my brother, and I'm so thankful for him, because he was so gracious. He insisted that we push forward on this. We were able to actually meet with the person who said the words, who was actually the head of this ministry group. And when we met with him, just as humble and listen, and it was a wonderful time. But Fred was so troubled by it, rather than just trying to uproot the board over our disagreement, he quietly stepped away. So now let's fast forward. I was in town. I work in East Tennessee during the week, and I'm a physician, and my work is there. And so I'm working there, and I'm watching some of the local things, and I see Fred being interviewed. And boy, you talk about how the Holy Spirit works. The Spirit just said, "You remember Fred you just saw? You thought it was more important to defend the reputation of your ministry than it was to love on a hurting brother."
All right.
And it was just this all of a sudden of, I've got to contact Fred and make this right, because I've wronged
There
him.
it is. Yep.
And so I texted Fred and I said, "Fred, I'd love to talk to you about, I saw you on TV and stuff." So bless his heart, he called me back. He was so gracious. I said, "Fred, I've sinned against God and I've sinned against you
Right.
by counting the reputation of a ministry over my hurting brother
Mm-hmm.
that was honestly just saying, I'm hurting. Come alongside me."
Yep.
Fred was so gracious. He forgave me, and we met together, and I said, "Fred and Pastor Dexter, this is some conversation that those of us that are white skinned need to have with our brothers and sisters in the Black and brown community. We need accountability, because we have for too
Yep.
long said, it's not that I don't like, I'm just indifferent." And we'll
Yep.
give you two examples of where a couple of pictures I want you to see. One is one of my children was not hated in high school. She was ignored.
Yep. Okay.
They didn't ever beat her up or mess with her, whatever. She didn't exist. So basically, as a hurting parent, I'm looking at that. And again, God is so kind to say, "Do you see what you've done to your Black and brown and all the other things that Pastor Dexter mentioned in the community right here with us?"
Mm-hmm.
You've basically said, it doesn't exist. It makes me think of when Jesus was with the disciples on the Mount of Transfiguration. And Peter was so excited. "Let's stay here. This is where we need to be." And Jesus said, No. You're missing it. Our ministry is to the people.
Yep.
Right
there.
and in our white churches, white-skinned churches, we have just said, well, that's a problem they're dealing with, and we're okay. So let's just give lip service or whatever it may be. And I'm speaking about me. Please understand, it just takes, it's my heart to those that I'm speaking to. And then finally, I was back to that quote that I said, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. A buddy of mine, when one of my children was in Boy Scouts, had this hat, and the hat said NMP, because he was trying to teach the Boy Scouts that you need to deal with this, you need to get it done, and it's on you. And it meant not my problem. And that's exactly the way that my heart has dealt with these issues for years and years and years. My children kid me, they said, Dad's woke. I said, no, I'm aware. God has to continue to work in my heart. It's been 59 years now that I've been on this earth. And now it's one of those moments where God's saying, okay, there's work to do. And I made people different colors because I'm a creative God, and it's kind of cool. How dare you think that it meant that somehow your skin color means that one is superior than the other? So I can only speak for one person. And I will say in my heart that when I say the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference, for me, no longer. And I told Fred, I said, Fred, we are going to meet on a regular basis. I need accountability from those that don't look like or act like or think like me.
All right.
So thank you so much for letting me be among you. And thank you so much for all the things that are happening this day and for such a time as this.
Thank you. Come on, y'all give it up for Dr. Tim, man. And again, this is one of those transparent moments where we want to be transparent. We also want to be truthful, but then also there are solutions. So one of those solutions I will go back is that we have to hold ourselves accountable by being accountable to a neighbor that does not look like us, and then accountable to our neighbors that do look like us too. The third point was brought out very, very eloquently and seriously by Pastor Strong, is that we have to now look at it from the inside of the church in the four walls of institution out. And so make sure you connect with these individuals and make a significant difference. Now we're going to shift a little bit. We got some spoken word. Marcus Sims, why don't you come up and introduce, and y'all give it for Marcus Sims. He's from WJB, radio personality, does Poetry Corner. He's the man. This my homie. This my neighbor.
How's everyone doing?
All right.
I'm not going to be long whatsoever, but when me and Minister Fred talked about when they were planning this event and this was coming together, one of the things I wanted to bring in was that we made sure that we had a certain demographic recognized and represented, and that was those that are really on the streets protesting, rallying, and getting the message across, and that's the young people, the youth, the ones that are really taking this message forward, I guess you could say. So it was really important that we reached out to the young people, the millennials. And so the first thing I thought was I started reaching out to my friends that I know, my associates, many of them from my years as Alabama A&M's Poetry Club advisor. And the spoken word, the arts, as I told more than one person, I really believe it's going to be the arts, it's going to be the creatives that are going to take us to a whole new demographic when all this takes place. It's going to be that form. We got three incredible artists that are coming up. When they come up, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but all of them represent the Alabama A&M University. But first and foremost, I'm going to bring up my man from hailing from Memphis, Tennessee. He's an author, spoken word artist, a musician. Just really, I've known this brother for quite a while. My brother Marquez McClinton. Put your hands together for Marquez McClinton.
All right.
You ready, Rocky? You ready, Rocky? Bring Rocky.
You funny. You real funny. Mark is funny.
Check, mic check.
Check. Here you go. Hey, y'all doing? I'm Marquez McClinton. I am a spoken word poet. The name of this piece, can y'all hear me? Yeah. Okay. The name of this piece is Until Further Notice. Because me and good health, we go way back like 4 flats on the Cadillac, there's no cap. Let me stop capping, shout out to Kaepernick.
All right.
It's the year 2020 and babies are being born, toddlers are learning how to walk, kids are making fun of each other, teens are making TikTok videos, and adults are politicking, talking about politicians that we don't really know about. I probably took about an hour just to get off of social media and think about it. And when I think about it, this world is changing. Some kind of way we went from being segregated to being integrated to being separated by a virus. I can't even see my friends or family or co-workers in person. I gotta talk to them over a computer. So basically we living in virtual reality. Sims.
All right.
Simpsons had more hits than misses in their predictions that I failed to mention that tough times don't last and tough people do. They ask why so serious, why they laughing at us, but we still rising from the ash like a phoenix. Joaquin, James, handshakes like before games, that's why we play inside. Death toll went from 0 to 100 real quick. And shout out to the first responders who responded to people real quick, and the surgeons who doing surgery on people that's real sick, and the essential and non-essential workers who got their stimulus check. I hope you didn't spend it all in one place now. I hope you didn't spend it all in one place now.
Invest.
Until further notice. Because me and good health, we go way back like 4 flats on a Cadillac, there's no cap. Let me stop capping, shout out to Kaepernick. They said that the pandemic might last into the next fall, and I ain't talking about when you're feeling a little slurry from that last call from alcohol. Quarantine, quarantine. People get laid off jobs. Who's the quarantine? NBA got shut down. Who's the quarantine? But look, we ain't teens no more. We grown now. It's time to save the world now. Even if them niggas putting on a COVID mask and staying in the house until further notice. I know more than I show because I grew up on the 6 side with the 6 upside down next to the 01 on some Memphis area code type. 2 thumbs up, no side. No side. That's how we used to greet each other back in the day, but this before the culture vultures came in and took the culture, and the same thing that happened back then is the same thing that happened today. Cops standing shooting innocent black men from beyond the arc, no Steph Curry 223s. Got us leaving the house like dang, is this a last dance? No MJ 223s. So I'm passing history to the next generation with 3 seconds left on the clock in the end of regulation, but they ain't going to overtime because it seemed like we stuck in time. Until further notice. Is it?
All right.
Thank y'all. Thanks, Nuggets.
Come on, y'all. Put your hands together for my man, Marquise. Wow. That's what's up. Transparency 100 all day. Y'all enjoying yourself? All right, so we're going to keep this thing going on. And in light of what's happening, this young brother been knowing him a long time. It was like this. Now he's leading in this amazing journey for justice, equity, equality, and so much more. I want you to put your hands together for my man. Come on up here, Trey Calvert. Come on, y'all. Put your hands together for Trey Calvert, one of our community leaders.
I'll wipe off my own, Mike.
Okay, in the spirit of the event, my text was Philippians 4:8, so I'll start off by reading that. Oh, that's all good. Okay, I'm gonna have to wait for that to pull up, but keep it right on moving. At the end of the day, the reason why I got involved and the reason why I hope everyone else will get involved is because even though I am a black man and this isn't my community, this is an American problem. And I will keep saying that until people start to listen and until people start to agree. Because at the end of the day, we are a society, we are a community. If we didn't need each other, we wouldn't be together.
Right. That's right.
Every community you look in, even if it's only a couple of the others, if it's a black community, even if it's only a couple of white people or a couple of Mexican people or a couple of Asian people, those people are there and those people matter. And even though they're the minority in their communities, they still matter. And that's the overall message that I just want people to understand. And if we're talking about the concept of love thy neighbor, when you look at the Bible, the greatest examples of love are sacrifice. Okay. So if you want to tell me that you love me, then don't tell me nice things to my face or tell me nice things to other people. The way that you show me is you tell me what exactly are you willing to sacrifice for me. Because that's what true and the essence of love is. And I think that's why so many of us, like he said, think we've been loving our neighbor, but we have no real love for our neighbor because until recently, we haven't proven that we're willing to sacrifice anything. But that is something that is also not color specific. And the reason why I say that is this is a wonderful event. It's been put together well, but a lot of individuals who should be standing out here in the audience with you are not there. And you know why? Because they weren't even willing to sacrifice their time. So that being said, once again, like others have said, I'm not worried about the problems. Now we're focused on the solutions.
Right.
The fact that everybody is out here today, that means that you're also focused on the solutions.
That's right.
So I'm going to tell y'all, thank you all. We appreciate you being out here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get into my quote unquote speech. The 3 things that I want to talk about today are the 3 E's. It starts with education, from education that moves into empowerment, and that is how we ultimately reach equality. All right? So first off, we'll talk about education. Recently, I've been learning to play chess. You know what it means when you learn to play chess? You lose a lot. Right? Okay. But with every loss comes a lesson.
Okay.
And when you're talking about moving, or you're talking about doing something new, or you're talking about doing something uncomfortable, the one thing that you have to be prepared for and the one thing you have to expect is to take some losses.
Yep.
But as long as you learn throughout those losses, then that's never truly a loss. And I think the reason why a lot of us are scared to get involved, or a lot of us are scared to move into the space that God has called us to move into, is because we're worried about taking a loss. But when I sat back and I had to internalize all the things that have been happening to my people, all the things that have been happening in my community, and all of the losses that we have had to take, and I decided that no more losses will be taken without me showing the lessons that I've learned. And so, that being said, I want to call to my community, and my community is Huntsville. Let's get that understood. Every corner, every square inch, every square mile, because that has been earned by all the people of this city, that all of us are equal members and equal citizens. So the call that I'm making to my city is, this is the most important thing going on in our city right now.
Yep.
So if y'all can still manage to go out to the club on Friday and Saturday night, if y'all can still manage to go to whatever your local organization or whatever your local hangout spot is, then y'all should be able to manage to step out here and speak for change. Yep. Y'all should be willing to count yourself in the number of those who are protesting and the number of those who are trying to find ways to truly make Huntsville a better place. Because that's the most important thing going on in this city right now. So I challenge everyone, like they said before, whether it's pastors, whether it's elected officials, whether it's police officers in their day-to-day activities, whether it's the post office worker, whatever your deal and your thing is, the most important thing that's going on in Huntsville, Alabama right now is social justice reform. So I ask that you find some type of way to implement that into your daily life, because the best way that we'll see change as regular everyday people is changing our everyday lives.
There it is.
It's changing our everyday environments, because those are the people that we can most directly affect, because those are the people that depend on us. So while we're giving all this other information, let's give them some information that'll truly better their lives and better the lives of those who have been calling and crying out. I thank you to everyone that has answered the call, but I'm calling out to everyone else. We need more help. We need more participation. We need to apply more pressure. And that is the message that you will hear from me from now until this thing is over. Thank you.
Amen. All right.
Yeah, give it up some, appreciate y'all. Trey, give it up some man Trey, man. Oh, yeah. Word. And let me tell y'all something. This is what's going to make the difference in our transformation of our community. This is what's going to make a difference in whether things get done and how they get done and when they get done. All right, so we have, before Roger comes up, I want to get another spoken word artist in. Are you okay with that? We have another, Marcus, why don't you introduce your second Alabama A&M poet at this time? Y'all give it up again for my man, Marcus Sims.
All right.
A couple quick things before we bring up another poet, spoken word artist. If you all have not visited any of the tables, please do so. You've got voter registration going on. You've be sure to go to the gift table that's over there. Be sure to get some water. And be sure to check out the tables before you leave or go anywhere. Also, if you're taking any pictures, video, or whatever, please be sure to tag Minister Fred Whitlow. That's at No More Dirty Radio on Facebook and Instagram. Also tag WJB on Facebook and Instagram as well. Let's kind of get this thing going, so on and so forth. Quickly, the Society for Lyrically Advanced Poets. That's slap. But you know what? If Alabama A&M, what slap is to the poetry scene is these are guys that practice nonstop. They go hardcore. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna have both of y'all come up, but only one's gonna perform at a time, because we gotta save, the heavy hitters. The heavy hitters, you know what I'm saying? But I want to thank so much once again, Minister Fred, for believing in having the millennials, the youth, the young people, the ones that got something to say during this time. It's a very important time. Once again, as I said before, if you're seeing what's going on across the country and the world, it's these individuals that are leading the charge. It's these individuals that are out here right now that are making the change. And yanking down some of them statues, right? All right. So I want you to introduce yourself.
Age group. Not them.
Introduce yourself. And,
Right. Guess we have any chiefs of police watching.
I'm running this show. You don't tell me what to do. What's what we're gonna do? We're gonna introduce. Tell them, your major, Alabama A&M, and all that good stuff. And get to it, all right? Bam.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cameron Jalil B. Jackmar. I'm a senior at Alabama A&M University. I major in marketing. I'm from Broward County, Florida. You know what I'm saying? 954 represent. I'm a founder of Lyrical Disciples, and I'm also a member of SLAP LD. Yes, sir. How you guys doing? My name is Giante Page. I'm a rising junior computer science with a minor in psychology major at Alabama A&M University. I'm from the champion city of Chicago, Illinois.
That's okay.
I'm a founder of Lyrical Disciples and a member of SLAP. This piece is called Stop Playing Games With Us.
All right.
They think it's a game. How these so-called policemen have no soul caliber when these boys, PlayStations, NBA, Live Monster, and non streets with no responsibility to simply a world of Warcraft. Life for good fortune when we 300 behind. I ain't good at math, but I could tell time and it ought to be a crime, but it's okay. Cause a wise man once told me that freedom don't come until you cross that bridge. Why the song go? Give me the bridge, give me the bridge, give me the bridge, y'all. Cause I feel like busting loose. I feel like busting loose. Shackles off my feet, chains off my wrist, pain out my mind. Told my mama we gon' be fine.
Okay.
Word on the grapevine is that greatness is born in uncomfortable situations, and we, the people, haven't felt right since day one. But it's cool, cause change gonna come.
All right. There it is.
Come on, y'all, put your hands together. This is what's up.
Yeah.
It's the young people and the young adults and the millennials and those that are a little bit younger than we are that's gonna make a significant change. We're gonna keep it rolling. My man, my neighbor, this is my homie, man. Let me tell y'all something. When you can say that a person is your friend, your brother, your neighbor, this brother got a key to my house. When I'm working for government, I'm traveling, my man holds my house down because that's my neighbor. We've got to get to the point where we are neighbors. You hear me? Neighbors. And here we go. My neighbor, Roger Martin.
So Jesus was talking to a group of people, may have been this size, don't know how many it was. And there's somebody who called out and said, because see, there was talk, what we've been talking about. And Jesus just said, the greatest command in all the Bible is to love your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. The second is right there. Love your neighbor as yourself. And it got quiet for a second. And then one guy said, well, who's my neighbor? And it was a real nice looking guy like me who said it, and he regretted it later, I assure you. I got to tell you, I got to take that seriously. Because here's what I believe about God. I believe Jesus is God. I believe he made the universe we live in. I believe he knows every name and he knows your story. I believe that no one has ever loved more than Jesus has. I believe that Jesus died for everyone to forgive them. And I believe he's the Lord of every person. And he's certainly the Lord of me because I've made that choice. So if he's going to answer the question, who is my neighbor? I'm listening. I'm listening because it's got to change me. It's got to do something to me. So I guess the guy was just expecting there to be a nice little answer, right? But Jesus don't work that way. Jesus says, I'm going to tell a story. Here's what's dope about a story. The story is you got to connect the dots. You got to put yourself in the story. You're not going to get a simple little answer. And if you can't figure it out, you're going to miss out what the story is about. And I'm going to tell you just a second the story he told, and you're supposed to find your place in the story, right? And we call it the story of the Good Samaritan. It's a terrible name. I'm going to tell you in a minute what we should call it, all right? But we call it the parable of the Good Samaritan. And Jesus goes on with this story. He said, there's a man walking through a nice city like Huntsville, and a gang of robbers light on him, and they beat the out of him, and they leave him half dead because they don't care whether he's dead or alive. All right, so that's the story, right? They're leaving him for dead. Well, thank God in the story, a nice religious person like me comes by, and we can all breathe a sigh of relief. And so the priest comes up, and he sees the man dying in the street, and he keeps walking. No, it's worse than that. Jesus says he walks to the other side of the freaking street. And Jesus is saying it ain't accidental. He walked the other way on purpose. But then Jesus says, thank goodness, we got another nice, good, religious person who's coming on the scene. And he walks up, and he does the exact same thing. He walks to the other side of the street to avoid seeing the man in the street. We call this the parable of the Good Samaritan. It should be called the parable of the two good people who walked to the other side of the street. Jesus named two people. You know what that tells me? These aren't incidentals. These aren't bit players. These aren't fill-ins. This is the story.
Okay.
Because remember, who asked the question? Oh, it was a religious person. Who's my neighbor? Wasn't a robber that asked the question, right?
Nope.
So he says, who is my neighbor? And I'm not comfortable with the two men in the story because the two men in the story are me. You catch what Jesus is saying? I remember when this hit me. There are three parties that don't care whether that man lives or dies. It's the robbers and two nice people like me. And God says they're all responsible. And I think, could any story of Jesus be more pointed to this hour, in this city, in this country, and this time than this story, right? Because here's what's going on. There's a man dying in the street. His name is George Floyd. His name is Ahmaud Arbery. Her name is Breonna Taylor. His name is Tamir Rice. His name is Eric Garner. And he's dying in the street. And Jesus is saying, who's responsible? Who is failing to love their neighbor as themselves? And he's saying, here's what happens. So in the churches of people who look like me, I'm just saying, so we're going to look at this and say, who is the man who's not loving his neighbor as himself? And we say, the robber. And here's what we say. I would never do that. I would never use the N-word. I would never attack someone that way. I'm not sending anybody to prison. I'm not controlling the bank loan rates and where people can buy homes. I'm not doing any of that. And we're thinking, I'm loving my neighbor as myself. And Jesus says, you're missing the key people in the story. The people who weren't loving their neighbors themselves weren't just the thieves. It was the people who were walking away, who were deliberately walking on the other side of the street and saying, it's not my responsibility. You know, one of the things I thought about with this story, I remember growing up hearing this story and saying, how could nice people walk to the other side? Here's what I've learned about nice people like me. If we're going to walk to the other side of the street, we're going to find a good religious reason to do so. All right? And I'm going to tell you, I think we began to walk to the other side of the street when we decry the looting and not the lynching. We walk to the other side of the street when we say, well, he had a record. We walk to the other side of the street when we say, well, she lived in the wrong neighborhood. We walk to the other side of the street when we say, the officer just made a mistake. We walk to the other side of the street when we say, racism is all over now. We walk to the other side of the street when we say, Huntsville's a nice city. We don't have those same problems. We walk to the other side of the street when we post videos of black people we don't even know on our Facebook page, and we won't listen to the black people we know right here in our city. We walk to the other side of the street when we don't hear our brothers and sisters' cries. We walk to the other side of the street and we say, all we just need to do is give people the gospel. We don't need to worry with this race issue stuff. And mostly we walk to the other side of the street when we say nothing at all. So what do we do now? And I have a lot of people who look like me who are asking that question. See, I'm starting to see it. I've been walking to the side of the street. What do I do now? And I'll just say, this here's for starters, right? What would you do if George Floyd was your father? 2 weeks ago, tomorrow, I went to a protest here in Huntsville because that's what I would do if George Floyd was my dad. I'm speaking here today because that's what I would do if Tamir Rice was my son. I'm pushing for police changing in policing because that's what I would do if Brianna was my daughter.
All right.
I'm reading all I can. I'm listening to my black brothers and sisters. I'm watching 13th. I'm watching When They See Us. I'm listening because that's what I would do if Rayshard was my son-in-law. I'm writing blogs because that's what I would do if George Floyd was my dad. In Jesus' words, if these people were my neighbor. And this takes a particular significance to me because Minister Fred is my neighbor. And I can't walk away because
Literally.
I keep seeing Minister Fred under the knee of that officer.
Okay.
And when I see that, I can't walk away. And I'm going to follow up a theme Pastor Strong said and others said, how far are we willing to go?
Yeah.
And I'll finish with the Good Samaritan here because listen, all right? He is important to the story because he's the antithesis of the people who walked away and walked to the other side. He went out of his way at every possible level. I talked to a black brother today, Ronald Pollard, and he said, remember this about the Samaritan. He said, he went all the way. And you think about it, remember this? He goes into a dangerous situation. His life could be at stake. Thieves could come and attack him. No, he goes to help the person. The man is bloody. We're all concerned about COVID and contamination, whatever. He moves past all that. He goes in, blood on him, blood on his donkey. He takes the man to an inn. Listen, he didn't just call 911. He takes the guy to an inn. He pays money. So when Dexter Strong and others talk about, are we willing to pay the price with money? Are we willing to pay the price with our time? He said, I'm going to come back and check again and see. If you want to see what going all the way looks like, now you can start looking at the Good Samaritan. So what I'm going to say today, I'm just going to call for all of us, but especially for people that look like me. I'm going to say, are we going to walk away or are we going to go all the way? Jesus tells me, I'm a follower of his. I can't walk away. I've got to go all the way. And by God's grace and help, that's what I'm going to do. I ask you to join me.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you being my neighbor, too.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. All right, we're going to keep this thing going now. Pastor, this is the pastor I met recently through Dr. Tim. is Pastor Will Speak, and I want him to come and share. Great guy. He's gonna tell you, man, you know, it's time. So I'm gonna just leave this to him. I'm gonna let you get the mic, wipe you down, and then you can do your thing.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for letting me be here with you this afternoon. I was going to talk to you for a few minutes about the parable of the Good Samaritan. Anybody heard of the parable of the Good Samaritan? Oh, you heard that one. And that's what happens sometimes when you get lots of preachers involved in the same thing. You know, we all want to talk. I'm so thankful for what Roger said and many others before that weren't talking specifically about the Good Samaritan. But I'm supposed to start by saying, hi, neighbor.
Hi, neighbor.
I'm glad you're my neighbor. I'm glad I get to be here with you. And I won't repeat what Roger said, but I just want to say a couple other things. As I've been learning, I'm not here because I'm an expert on these issues. In a lot of ways, like Marquez, I grew up in Memphis. In a lot of ways, I'm learning how many ways I've failed on these issues. As I've been listening and reading and learning just in the last few weeks, I've learned some heartbreaking things. When you're a pastor of a church, a lot of times the church is supposed to be the ones with the answers and the solutions to problems like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the problem is that oftentimes in our country for 400 years, the church has been part of the problem.
Yeah.
A big part of the problem. And we haven't always owned that. Even back before this was a country, back in the 1600s, there were states that on the books made laws that when you became baptized in their church, it didn't set you free.
What?
In Virginia, in Maryland, states like that in the 1600s, you could join the church, but it didn't change anything about your relationship to your other brothers and sisters in the church. Somebody wasn't reading the Bible.
No.
And that set in motion a history that the church has contributed to for several hundred years. You don't fix that in one day, and I'm not here with all the solutions to that. I love what Dexter and others have said about practical ways we can walk forward. For the church, it goes like what Dr. Tim shared earlier about himself personally. It starts with the church saying, we've missed it. We need to repent. We have not only failed to love our neighbor, in doing so, we've failed to love our God.
All right.
Who has directed us quite differently from the ways that we have often acted towards our brothers and sisters. That's part of what happens, as Roger mentioned in the parable of the Good Samaritan. The reason the religious leader asks, who is my neighbor, Jesus? Tell me who my neighbor is. You know why he asks? It's so he can justify himself. So he can hear who his neighbor is, so he can say, I've checked that box. I've loved my neighbor. Don't blame me. It's not my fault. I've done enough. And Jesus doesn't answer the question that simply, does he?
Nope.
He gets to the end of his story and he says, now, who do you think was a neighbor to the man who'd been beaten by? He said, you love everybody around you like that. And we've been too quick to see where we can get off the hook, feel good about ourselves, and move forward. And that's, we have to start by repenting of that.
Well, there it is.
By saying, God, what would you have us do now? How does this need to look different from what it has looked like? There's good news. The church does actually have the solution to this problem.
Yep.
If we believe it and live it.
Yep.
The Jesus who told that, the Samaritan who went all the way in loving his neighbor, is a beautiful picture of Jesus himself. You want to talk about loving somebody all the way? Jesus never stopped, all the way to giving his life. There wasn't a sacrifice that was too great for him. He went all the way to the cross for those who were very different from him, for those who didn't deserve his love, for those who had run away from him and even beaten him. He loved them anyway. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like for us here in Huntsville, and those who have spoken today know a lot better than I do what that looks like. But I know that Jesus calls us to love like that. And he allows us to, he enables us to, because he does it. He loves those who are different from him, who hate him, all the way to the cross where he's crying out, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. It doesn't stop him from going to the cross for them. So I hope all of us can rejoice in having someone who loves you like that. I'm going to try really hard to love my neighbor the rest of my life, but you know what? I'm never going to love you that well. I'm not. Jesus is. He will always love you and will never stop and will go all the way and give the greatest sacrifice for you. So where you've fallen short, church, repent. You have a Savior for that. He's big enough for you to own it and be honest, right? Be honest about the reality, even some of the reality you don't know. It's okay. You're safe to own it because you have a Savior. And he shows you then what it looks like to follow and to love the way that he has. Thanks, Fred.
All right.
Okay, wait. I need you to come. Now you're going to have to pray. You didn't told us what we got to do. That's another way. We talked, that's another way. So if you wouldn't mind praying a prayer of repentance, just helping us walk through that. And then from there, we will move to Captain Rice. I believe will be our next speaker. And he's really a great friend of mine.
I'd love to pray. You show up at Big Spring Park about any day this seems like this season, there's people getting together to pray.
Amen.
We're praying because we need God's help, but one of the things we can do is cry out to him and repent and lament. That's a big part of praying, one that we often don't do enough. So join me. I'll lead us in praying and crying out to God. Father, we're here today not because we are the strong ones or we're the ones with the answers, but because we believe that you are. So we turn to you and we confess, Father, I confess I've sinned. I've turned the other way. I've, like Roger, walked to the other side of the street and not loved the way that Jesus does. In fact, shown that indifference that so dishonors those you've made beautiful in your image, valuable to you, precious to you, and yet not treated that way. Father, it breaks your heart. I know it does because you tell us that you're near to the brokenhearted. You love them. You identify with them. And when they weep, you weep. And sometimes we don't. Forgive us, Father, and would you heal us? Would you bring the kind of healing that Jesus brings through his death, through his sacrifice for us? He brings together those who were otherwise enemies, who are different, who aren't motivated to love each other. So we need your help. Oh, Jesus, would you please breathe new life into this city, bring revival to Huntsville, that it might go from here to many other places. Would you show our churches what it looks like, not just to talk about Jesus, but to love like Jesus? We need your help. And we ask for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, y'all give it up for the pastor. And let's give it up to God for holding this rain. Remember, they said it's supposed to rain at like 11. It's supposed to be 90% rain. Y'all better give it up for Jesus, for real. For real. You don't fool with God, man. God said, look. I called about 2 or 3 people. I said, get online. The next thing, it was 50 people praying. I was like, we just need to get to 6 o'clock. Get us to 6, and then, Lord, you can water the whole world if you want. All right, so this is, I told you, it's 2 people in my life that made probably one of the biggest impact outside my biological father, who passed in 2015. One was Dr. Hobbs, who spoke, and then the second one is this gentleman here, Captain Jeffrey Rice Sr. I mean, when I was ready to quit because I felt overwhelmed, he was like, now, Mr. Whitlow, Brother Whitlow, you just got to breathe. And now I'm still working at my job 10 years as of July 11. I was ready to be out after the 3rd year. So y'all put your hands together for Captain Rice, and he's going to wipe it down and do what he does.
All right, thank you, Brother Fred. My religious persuasion is Baptist, so I'm going to use the 3 B's today. I'm going to be up. I'm going to be brief, and I'm going to go ahead and be seated, okay? So I would like to start off with a Bible verse. That's the 133rd Psalms. It states, how good and pleasant it is when brethren gather together in unity. This is what we're here for today,
for unity as a community. I'm glad to be a part of the Huntsville Police Department. I serve as the captain of the North Precinct. I've been in law enforcement altogether almost 24 years. I've had people ask me, well, are you going to retire soon? Don't you want to get out of the profession? Are you conflicted as being a black man in law enforcement? Well, my answer to that is that I am not conflicted. I am convicted that we're going to do things, and we're going to do things in the right way. But we're looking for solutions, as Pastor Strong talked about earlier. Guys, I've done community forums, I've done community talks. All of that's great. But guys, it's time for action. It's time to get to work. It's time to get back here, if you're not registered to vote, to get registered to vote.
Mm-hmm.
That's where your power is.
Mm-hmm.
Get out and work in the community.
Yep.
As a community, as a captain, I'm all about the community. I believe that the police department is only as strong as the community that it serves.
Yep.
And you must have a relationship with the community that you serve.
That's it.
I tell people, I'm not just your precinct commander. I am your neighbor. I've been saying that since day one. I am your neighbor. Like Mr. Strong, I'm a kid from North Huntsville, born and raised, educated on Norman's Hill from the time I was 3 years old. And I'm proud to be from North Huntsville, but I'm proud to be from Huntsville, period. But folks, we can do better. We got to do better, and we can do better together. We've got to work together in a systematic manner to bring about positive and meaningful change.
Yep.
Not change just for the sake of change, but being deliberate about what we do.
Yes.
So again, I thank you for allowing me to come out today. Fred and I have worked together with the youth in our housing communities for years. We'll continue to work together. We have to encourage one another because it gets rough in the fight. It gets tough in the fight. But with the strength that is sent from above, we'll continue to fight, but we're going to continue for right, and we're going to do things in the right way. As I tell people, the Huntsville Police Department, it's a good police department, but we're working toward greatness. In order to be great, we got to come together. We got to do things the right way. So again, thank you. God bless you, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Captain Rice. Hey, and happy Father's Day. How many fathers? If you're a father, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you're a father figure, because I'm a father figure. I got thousands I work with every day. So I'm gonna sing this song. Happy Father's Day to you. Happy Father's Day to you. Happy Father's Day to all of you. Happy Father's Day to you. All right, that's what's up. Oh no, that's the Black Flames finale. Yeah.
That's Elvis.
Oh, that's the Black Elvis. Not take it all, whatever. All right, so check it. We have a special treat, right? So I want to do this right, and then I'm going to step out the way. And listen, let's give it a look at the sun is out. Yo, like I'm tripping. It's going to be 90% rain from 11, 12, 1 o'clock, 2, 3, 4. It's supposed to shut down it's supposed to go to 40% rain at 4:30. Praise God. Is that the sun out there I see? Wait, is that the sun out there I see?
Oh.
Do we have a breeze and we ain't burning up? Y'all better put your hands together for the Lord, man, straight up.
Man.
I mean, I'm a Jesus freak as well as doing this. All right, so we have coming to the stage this amazing judge, and she's going to share as in presenting another person. And I want to say special thanks to all of our media, Channel 48 and Channel 54 for taking the time to be here, and also to WJAB. Awesome. That's what I'm talking about. The pastor is here. Get the closest right. All right, so I want to thank you to WJAB And of course, we up No More Dirty Radio Show. Let me plug that shameless. Every Sunday, 6 o'clock tonight, No More Dirty Radio, the cleanest #1 for clean hip hop and conscious and all that good stuff on 103.1 We Up. You can download the app, go to our website, nomoredirty.org, and all that jazz. Make sure you go by and get a gift. Now, we got a lot of people that believe in this thing. And those are nice gifts in the bags. And the bags themselves is probably about $15, just a bag. So you need to make sure that you go over there, get your gift bag, especially the fathers. You can have 2 if you're a father. Just share with another brother. And then we have bottled water, and we have a little snack because we got an activity at the end. All right. So I'm going to keep this thing moving. We're making good time. You already know. Y'all give it for a man, DJ Scissorhand, man. This is my homie, man. Wherever he always got my back on the sound on 1s and 2s, all that jazz. All right, here we go. I know. We got Judge in the house. This Judge, she's done a lot for our community. Oh, where you at? Oh, right there. Okay, word. And so, without any further ado, come on, Judge. Why don't you do your special introduction? Hold up.
Thank you, Pastor Whitlow. It's a pleasure to be here today and to share in this beautiful occasion of loving thy neighbor. Now, I know of no one in our community who would have been so passionate about putting on an event like this other than Pastor Whitlow. And of course, when he called and he asked me if I would mind saying a few words, it was an immediate, of course, I would love to come. But I felt like another voice needed to be heard at this time. And I'm going to get to that in just a moment, and I'll tell you what I'm talking about. But I want to also introduce you all to my family, my beautiful family. My husband, Rodney Pennywell. Rodney, raise your hand. Together, Rodney and I share 6 beautiful children, and we have 4 of them with us today. And we have Mr. Jordan in blue. Raise your hand, Jordan. We have Miss Sydney. We're so proud of her. She just graduated from Bob Jones High School on her way to the University of Tampa to study forensics in the Honors College. So we are so proud of her. And then we have an artist in the family, Mr. Bryce Pennywell. Raise your hand. And I did say we have 4 children here today, but I also have another daughter who's my adopted daughter, so to speak. She is my daughter's roommate in law school, Miss Gray. Raise your hand. All right. So the reason I did not introduce the 4th is because I want to tell you about her now. As many of you know, I have been very passionate about reform in the judicial system ever since I came on the bench, and I've tried to do the best that I know to do to make the system work better for the people that we serve. But my daughter, Kayla Cleveland, is here with us today. Kayla is a 3rd-year law student at Cumberland School of Law, and you know, they say that the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, but I really can't take any credit for her passion. She is passionate about doing whatever she can to clear up some of the disparities in the system and how individuals are treated in the criminal justice system. So I'm not going to steal her thunder. I want to bring her up now. I'm going to turn this mic over to her, and I want her to talk to you a little bit about herself and tell you a little bit about her passion. Kayla Cleveland.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Cleveland, and I'm a native from Huntsville, Alabama. I graduated from Bob Jones, and then I graduated from the University of North Alabama. So right now I am in my third and final year of law school at Cumberland School of Law in Birmingham, Alabama. From a young age, I was taught to look critically at issues and consider whether they were fair to all people. So that's why I went to law school. And over the past couple of years, I have been pretty active in my community, working on restorative justice issues. I work with the American Bar Association's Criminal Justice Committee. I'm the vice chair of that committee. We research and write policy proposals on voting rights for people that are incarcerated. And we also write policy proposals for free hygiene products for prisoners that are also incarcerated. I also founded the Juvenile Justice Reform Project at our school, and we work with judges and juvenile detention centers and develop research for scholarship. And currently, I am clerking with Louisiana Center for Children's Rights, and I work on juvenile life without parole on post-conviction litigation. So that's a little background of what I do. I appreciate you guys having me here and willing to listen to me, and I just wanted to share some of my research with you guys. So the facts are that Alabama does not value our youth. Instead of focusing on rehabilitation and giving youth opportunities to grow into law-abiding adults, we just lock them up. Alabama allows children as young as 14 to be charged as adults and sent to adult prisons. And in these conditions, children are 9 times more likely to commit suicide and be sexually assaulted in these prisons. Detention centers are supposed to be designed to be rehabilitative, but they lack the resources, they lack the funding, they lack the education programs and the evidence-based rehabilitative programs for these children that are in these centers. So these children that go through the system, they are more likely to stay in the system even throughout their adult years. But I could go on and on about that. But the bigger picture is that our legislatures vote on laws under the guise that they are tough on crime. And these laws often directly hurt our communities, especially our Black community and our Hispanic communities. So our lawmakers need to be more inclusive. They need to work directly with the community. They need to work with young people desperately. And they need to make decisions that are fact-based and delve deeper into the issues and get input from the community instead of getting input from their constituents. For example, I researched Alabama's juvenile justice bill, and the bill has a set of recommendations that were not very well thought out. It still allows children to be transferred into the adult system and still be housed in adult prisons and jails. And if implemented, this law and their recommendations in this law could overwhelm the juvenile justice system. So we need our lawmakers to invest money into evidence-based rehabilitative programs and education programs. We need to get rid of statutory transfer laws that keep youth in adult prisons. And we need to just overall treat children like children and not convict them to a life of a hardened criminal. And loving thy neighbor is valuing our youth, and we need to do better. Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Come on, y'all. This is young adults here. And these are the individuals that are going to make the difference and are making the difference. And I'll tell you what, when you come back again, when you're in our area and all that jazz, please come back. You be a part of our committee since you're from Huntsville, even though you might be somewhere else finishing up that big degree and all that stuff. We want that too. So at this time, I want to introduce a young lady that is very, very dear and friend of mine, and she's so passionate. And then we're down to the last 2 people speaking, so don't go anywhere. We have gifts again, and we have some water and all that jazz. All right, come on, Miss Violet. Y'all give that for Miss Violet in a very special way.
All right.
Hello, neighbors.
Hello, neighbor.
It is good to see you out here today. Thank you so much for the invitation to come, and I will be brief. My name is Violet Edwards, and I will stay on the theme of loving your neighbor. And I think the theme today was loving in action and not just in word and in speech. And like many of you here, I moved to Huntsville, whether it was for work or whether it was school, and just stayed here. We got here and we just dug our roots in, and this is where we wanted to be. Fell in love with it. But I knew exactly when Huntsville was going to be my home and I wasn't going to go anywhere. It was the people. It wasn't my house. It wasn't my job. It was the people. Think back to 2011 when the tornadoes came through. And Huntsville did not have power for a week. Y'all remember that? That was a tough week. It was hard to get through. But we lifted each other up. Just on my block alone, we had one neighbor that had a generator, and all of us went to our shed and we grabbed our gas from our lawnmowers, and we made sure that that generator stayed on for that entire week so we could keep our phones charged. And we had one little refrigerator that we made sure everybody's medicine was able to stay cold. We had another neighbor who had meat in his deep freezer for like 5 years. For 5 days, we ate mystery meat. I don't know what it was, but we cooked it on the grill and we ate. That was neighbors loving neighbors.
Okay.
That's what we did. So here, at the time also, I was working at a nonprofit, and this nonprofit worked with people emergency. And it was a time of emergency, and our roles tripled. And we had people that needed help that never needed help before. But we also had people come through and donated that had never donated before. And they did this because they had neighbors in need. It was neighbors helping neighbors. And now here we are. We've gone through this pandemic. Some people have lost jobs or hours. Some people have had families with illness or death. But again, I have to smile and just say, I'm so proud of Huntsville because I see people every day, every week of this pandemic. Somebody has given food away. Somebody has given clothes away. There's been assistance with utilities. Again, it is neighbors helping neighbors. And I just want to say that I'm proud of you. That is love in action. That's just not words.
Yeah.
So I'm running for office, and this is not a plea to vote for me. But love your community enough to go and research your candidates. Find that candidate that's going to fight for you. Find that candidate that's going to fight with you, and look at your boards and your commissions and make sure they are as diverse as Huntsville. This is time for action that acts of love. Love your community enough to get involved. Now let's get up and let's get moving. Thank you so much for having me today.
All right.
All right, y'all give it up one more time for Miss Violet Edwards. So y'all go check her out. If she's solid, lock it in. All right, check it. All right, so I'm going to do this real quick. We have only 2 more wonderful but amazing presentations. And I'm going to ask my buddy DJ Scissorhand to come up and share, because really good friend of mine. And y'all put your hands together for DJ Scissorhand. It goes like this. Got to show him, bro. Show him. Come on, y'all. Look. Come on, all 3.
All
1,
right.
2, 3. Let's do it.
Shoot.
There it is. He's the one to be on my. We just finished an album together called Quarantine. We did it in 3 weeks and 2 days, and it was about coming out of this kind of stuff mentally, financially, socially, economically.
All right, I'm not gonna take up much of your time. I know a lot of y'all see a lot of my face around Huntsville. I'm originally from Pulaski, Tennessee. A place of nowhere with a lot of history. Yes, we all know that's the birthplace of the KKK. What I want to touch on is I was raised by 2 black parents. I had both my parents in the household. Shout out to my children. I'm a full-time father, single, but shout out to my girlfriend for assisting me. Unity. We talking about love and unity and neighbors. But my parents took me to these Klan rallies as a child. The police protect the Klan members around our courthouse, which they congregated in front of a monument that maybe half the citizens don't even understand, but I did because I'm very
proud that I was also raised a Jehovah's Witness. So another part of unity, I say that because I grew up in worshiping with black and white people, is what I'm saying. But coming in a community with so much hate, it was an underlining theme in the community where silence moved across the white people and the black people. And sometimes we bow down to authority and feel powerless because of the position we're in. But we need to channel some of those energies and efforts into our voice or making a statement. Like we saying voting is the voice. But make your statement in truth and stand on it, because God is the only way we're going to get to this thing. And it's going to change the hearts of their hatred into a love or an understanding. Because first of all, we got to have an understanding of these situations before we can even make a judgment of a character or a circumstance that people go through. Because a lot of times we get crippled, you know, or taken away. A lot of families get broke down. I come from an era, in saying the Klan riots, also come from an era where things were implemented to break up homes, where fathers were removed and things like that. You know what I'm saying? But I just want to be transparent, because you see me out through Huntsville. I'm always working with the community. I'm trying to provide the love piece, the Christ piece, the clean piece through our music. Everybody like to party and dance, but sometimes it's just too serious. So we're going to bring it all to you. And thank you, Minister Fred, for bringing us these resources, and thank the community and the city for allowing this, because I couldn't even see this going on in Pulaski. We got to get past that. So that's what I want to speak to it. Anybody willing to help, please contact me, because I know a lot of folks, we might not be organized right. I know that's part of the plan. We organize and then execute the plan. So thank you very much.
Come on, man. Y'all give it up for my man, DJ Scissorhand, man. And let me tell you something. This guy got a testimony how he, man, that made that turn, and he's doing some positive, amazing things. And all of it takes is being a neighbor, a real neighbor, not a neighbor just in words, we live next door, but a neighbor that's connected. All right, so, okay, yes. At this time, I'm going to ask the pastor to come up. Pastor Darius. He's so smooth, Pastor Darius, man. This cat has the smoothest shoes in America. Pastor Darius Butler, Stacy's. Those Stacy's are floor shoes. Go ahead, y'all give it up for my man one time. Kind of version.
So thank you, Minister Fred. Thank you for inviting me to share briefly these words of encouragement. And I want to greet all of you and thank you for your presence, which is a demonstration of profound commitment toward a future we can all inhabit together. So I'm a Christian minister, and so in my holy book, there is a message that resonates for this moment, where a young jurist tried to trap the Savior in some circular logic of interrogation. And he wanted to know which of the commandments was the most weighty of all. Which one should he observe, and which one upon which should he hang his hat? And because Jesus discerned that he had ulterior motives, he tells him about the commandment given in the Shema Yisrael to love the Lord your God with all your heart and your mind and your soul. And then Jesus did a remix by adding, and love your neighbor as yourself. Because the man was sophisticate and he was well versed in the law, he knew how to spring that trap. He asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" And perhaps like us, the presumption is it the person who lives to the left or the right of me? The one with whom I have daily in common fellowship? Or does this love of neighbor require some going beyond comfortable spaces and borders in order to demonstrate truly the love of God. So Jesus, who is the master teacher, tells the story of this winding road that goes down from Jerusalem to Jericho. And in a short distance, it takes a precipitous drop, and it's a perfect scenery and backdrop for an ambush. A man was going down that road, and he fell among thieves and robbers who stripped him of his valuable possessions. And they stripped him of his dignity, beat him within inches of his life. They left him there to die. The record is that some religious people, someone who consecrated his life and vocational identity to the priesthood in the temple, was going down the same thoroughfare that the man was laying on. And because of laws of ritual purity, perhaps not wanting to soil his own garments with the blood of one who was flowing, decides that he would pass on the other side. Similarly, one who had served in the laity capacity in the temple does the same thing. Because Jesus understands that there was antipathy racially between his kinfolk and their cousins, Samaritans, who had worshipped at an altar in the north, he ultimately turns the story on the ethnicity of the man who comes next, a Samaritan. Now, if you are a Bible reader, you know Jesus had an encounter with someone of his ilk while at a well, and a theological discourse ensued, and she was wondering where was the right place to worship, since her ancestors worshiped in the place in the north, and Jesus and his folks had come to Jerusalem as was their custom. She and he, like you and I, live out of certain social conventions that have been handed down to us, things we practice without any deliberate forethought or any evaluation, separate identities, no common lot considered about the ways we live among one another. And if you live out of those narratives, you will constantly repeat the mistakes of generations who have handed us the brokenness of those stories and never get the opportunity to write a new narrative. So when Jesus turns the prism as he is telling the story, he speaks about this Samaritan who had some means because he's traveling on a beast. He has finances because he can pay for the man's medical care. But ultimately, he had compassion because means and wealth are meaningless if they are not undergirded by some sense of common humanity. To be understood in the way Dr. King told us, you and we are tied in a single garment of destiny. We are trapped in this inescapable network of mutuality, that what affects me ultimately will affect you. What affects you will ultimately affect me. And unlike the Western ideology that suggests we are simply because we think, we are because of each other. And whenever one of us in the community cannot be what God intended him or her to be, then we have done violence against our own humanity and will suffer as a result. And in these days in which we have seen social agitation as a result of unrest in the land, this gathering can offer us a way forward. Because if we are to get there to the beloved community, if this enterprise and experiment of American democracy is to ever reach the ideals for which it claims to be founded, we've got to do it together. We've got to lock arms together. We've got to learn how to work through the difficult places of tension of the checkered past of this land, and together write a new narrative, not that the South shall rise again, but that a new South should be born, where the dream of America's chief apostle of love, Martin King, can truly become a reality and not a nightmare. You and I have that possibility together on a park on a Sunday afternoon in Huntsville, Alabama. If we are committed to the humanity and the dignity of each other, then nothing would be able to stop us. So let me close the way Jesus closed, as he tells about this Samaritan who picks up the man, puts him on his beast, takes him to a lodging place, pays for his medical care, right? That's affordable health care, praise the Lord. And says, if you incur any more expenses in ensuring that he is brought to wholeness upon my return, I shall make restitution and make you whole as well. And then Jesus turns to the young jurist who thought that he had trapped the master and ambushes him with a question of his own. Who was a neighbor? And he says, the one who showed mercy. And here's what Jesus says: I bid you good day. Go do likewise.
Thank you so much, Pastor. And in the spirit of what was mentioned, I'm going to ask Erica Fox to come up from WJB, and we're going to do something to show that what we've heard through the whole time. And she has a unique relationship with not just being an amazing radio announcer on WJB, not just being involved in a community, but she's also involved in an organization. I'm going to let her go from here. Let us put our hands together for Erica Fox.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to see you all here. I wrote out some things that I wanted to share, and then the activity that we're going to do afterwards, I hope that everybody stays to participate in it. Bernard Wright had a song titled, "Who Do You Love?" and asks, "Are you sure?" After this epic Juneteenth weekend, has your direction changed? Know that you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else. How do you see one another? How do you work together? Do you work together in love? Do you see each other with loving eyes? Until we decide we are in this together, we cannot live, work, or love one another. Are you breathing love into each other?
Okay.
Today and in your home, workplace, and your community. Enough is enough is enough, with our brothers and sisters saying they can't breathe. We must breathe love and life into each other. No more Eric Garners, Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, Jimmy Lee Jackson, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, James Reeb, Trayvon Martin, Viola Liuzzo, Dana Fletcher, Mother Emanuel 9, Philando Castile, just to name a few, dying because they're Black, or dying for the cause of people that are Black. As God breathed the breath of life to create man, we must breathe in our Black men. We must exhort, breathe, Black man. As I take a bit from my pastor, Reverend Dr. Don Darius Butler, in his message this morning, we must breathe and exhort Black man against systemic racism, against police brutality, against voter suppression, against white supremacy and ignorance, against miseducation, against inequality, against economic suppression, Again, just to name a few. We must breathe into our Black men, fathers, nephews, sons, grandsons, cousins, uncles, and granddaddies, and stepdads. Now, some of you only know music, so we must breathe loving existence into James Brown's Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud.
Okay.
The late jazz guitarist Zachary Breaux, when he played Red, Black, and Green, if breathe.
Amen.
Ms. Fox, are we ready to do this? So we wanted to do something different. Sorry about that. We want to do something really different, but transparent, but real. And I'm going to ask Erica Fox to share this. I want you all to be a part of this. It won't take long, but this will be the finale of what we're doing today. And then we want to say thank you on behalf of No More Dirty, all of our friends, and to all of our voter registration. I want to say thank you, Dr. Perry, and your whole crew, and also for the, come on, y'all, give it up for the voters registration, and also for census. And they actually let some people sign up and everything. So come on now, come on, come on. And we're going to keep doing this at every peaceful protest, at every assembly. We're going to always see that, because our voice is not only our voice, but it is who we are in terms of government, in terms of policy, and in terms of citizenship. Good neighboring is good citizenship. If we're good citizens by the standards of biblical and social and legal and legislative, then we will be in line with good citizenship with God. All right.
So I lived in Montgomery from 2000 to 2005. And growing up in California, I had never heard of the city Selma. I never heard of the Selma to Montgomery Voting Rights March. I had never heard of any of the people that participated in it till I moved to Montgomery. I'd heard of some names prior to that from going to Alabama A&M University and living here, like Representative John Lewis, just to name that one name. But then I learned of the ones that actually did the Selma March. So before we do that, I do want to encourage you all to go to Selma and do the bridge crossing, which they do every year. And then if you can get your mind ready to walk, we do the 54 miles every 5 years. And I've been honored that my knees have participated, have behaved, and I've done the 54 miles 5 times. It's quite an experience. And young people, you definitely have got to do it at least. Everybody needs to do it at least once to do that experience. So we brainstormed a little bit, and we said we wanted to kind of experience at least a march. And please don't go back and say to people, oh, they had a march, rally, protest. That's not what this is. So we are walking in love. We're walking in solidarity. We're walking in unity. So I think too much to go all the way around the pond. So what I would like is that we just start right here, and we're going to get on the path, and there's a bench right back there. So we're just going to go around that bench and then come back here. I will lead in songs, some of the songs we do in Selma. All you have to do is repeat what I say. That's it. If you can sing, sing. If you can't sing, doesn't matter. Just boots on the ground, voices to the air. That's what I've been saying. So if everybody will get up, and as we do now, as they did in 1965, we march in twos. The highway in 65 was only a 2-lane highway, one way going east and one way going west. So as they were marching east, You march in twos. That's what kept you safe and off, to the side of the road so nothing would happen to you. So find what we say, get your two, and we're going to start at the pole. Will this mic go all the way around? Okay. Get your two, find your partner. Find your partner. Get your do-si-do partner.
I have two, and then there's me.
Twos, only in twos, not threes. Twos. So again, just repeat what I say, okay? Are we ready? I love the dogs, they're in their twos already. Half a person each. That's how that's your four-legged children. There you go. All right, so just repeat after me. So first thing is, up above my head. Up above my head. I see freedom in the air. I see freedom in the air. Up above my head. Up above my head. I see freedom in the air. I see freedom in the air. And I really do believe. And I really do believe. There's a God somewhere. There's a God somewhere. Up above my head. Up above my head. I see Rosa in the air. I see Rosa in the air. Up above my head. Up above my head. I see Rosa in the air. I see Rosa in the air. And I really do believe. And I really do believe. There's a God somewhere. There's a God somewhere. Up above my head. Up above my head. I see George in the air. I see George in the air. Up above my head. Up above my head. I see George in the air. I see George in the air. And I really do believe. And I really do believe. There's a God somewhere. There's a God somewhere. Up above my head. Up above my head. I see justice in the air. I see justice in the air. Up above my head. Above my head. I see justice in the air. I see justice in the air. And I really do believe. I really do believe. There's a God somewhere. There's a God somewhere. Up above my head. Up above my head. I see freedom in the air. I see freedom in the air. Up above my head. Up above my head. I see freedom in the air. I see freedom in the air. And I really do believe. And I really do believe. There's a God somewhere. There's a God somewhere. Fire up! Fire up! Ready to go! Fired up! Ready to fight! Ain't gonna take it no more! Ain't gonna take it no more! Fired up! Fired up! Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around. Turn me around, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, turn me around. Turn me around, ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Fire up! Fire up! Ready to go! Fire up! Ain't gonna take it no more! Ain't gonna take it no more! Fired up! Y'all excited? Yeah! You ready to fight? Y'all ready to put your boots on the ground? Yeah! Off for the cause! Now I want to see you all in summer and March. Rain or shine. I need to see you all in the Selma Highway. Yeah, they say let's get in a circle. Yeah, we're gonna get in a circle at the start. Oh, let me go over on this side.
Follow the leader. Right here.
Okay, now everybody get in a circle.
Let's do a circle. We're gonna sing We Shall Overcome instead of say someday.
Today. Oh, come on, we're done. This is the end. Come on, Dad.
And happy Father's Day to you. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. Yeah. Again, we want to say thank you so much to everyone for taking the time out. I want to thank you for everybody who is checking out live streaming on YouTube pages, on our Instagram, Facebook. Special thanks to all our participants. Thank you so much to our city. And I just want to say thank you because you know what? We were able to do it here at the Big Spring Park West. Come on, y'all. Put your hands together. Put your hands together for Parks and Recreation. Salute to my man, Dave DeLissa, and also my brother, John. We also want to say thank you to HPD for still making this thing, because at the end of the day, we still have to work together. And in spite of the challenges that we have, God is good. What's up, man? Oh, man, that's what's up. Come on, right here, bro. Listen, y'all got to give it up. This is your boy, DJ, your boy, who's also part of the CLC connection. What's this? What's the tape, bro? Hey, how's it going? He was part of the original 4 or 5 of us that we were in the march on the 3rd, and we saw so many people, and because of that, we wanted to say thank you. And so part of this weekend, we had the Juneteenth on Friday. Shout out to the young ladies from Huntsville and from Tuskegee, and also to our civic engagement, and also WJB working with the Union Chapel Christian Church and Academy, and we had it there on Friday. And then on Saturday, salute to the crew and everybody. We were able to have a welcome to the family cookout. It was amazing. And we have a few other people. Angelo's not here, and we have a few, and Shakim and Cricket. So that's about the original crew concept. And then today we want to say thank you to our Pastor Will and to Captain Rice and Pastor Rusty and his wife Lisa and Butler, Dr. Butler, and then also Erica Fox, and who has Marcus Sims and Roger Martin. And we want to thank Dr. Perry for making this thing work. We had people sign up for the census and for voting. Come on now. They say out there we can't do it. We're going to say no, we can. We're going to disagree. And to all of you all, black, brown, white, and all that, and even our little doggies who want to say thank you. And also to our Qs, and we had all our, yes, first one we vote. You already know. And then also to Channel 48 and to all the other media. Come on, y'all, show some love. You know what I'm saying? They didn't have to come out. They could have been somewhere else, and they don't care, but they were here. So we want to shout out to all of our media people that made the decision to be here. So I'm going to do a prayer, and then we're going to do We Shall Overcome Today. This is
because we really aren't social distance at the moment, but we're not going to hold hands, but we're just emulate what you're supposed to do when you sing We Shall Overcome, right hand over left. So we all just want to stand. Okay, when we get to that part.
We shall. Oh, okay, so I'm supposed to pray first. Yeah, I'm a soldier. You already know. My bad. All right, let's do this. Lord, I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to come together and really understand the concept of loving our neighbor and doing what we can with our sphere of influence, and also being a blessing with our talent set, and also with our mouth and with our hands. And you said in 1 John 3:18 that we are to love with not just our mouth, but with our deeds, our action, and with our speech. And so, God, we ask now that everyone here will continue to do the loving thing, the good citizen thing, the good neighboring thing, and being able to share, and also get involved in the motion and the process of doing those things which are just and honorable for God and honorable with man, and showing mercy and being compassionate, and Micah 6:8. And God, we just say hallelujah to your name. We thank you for all the parties that made this happen, city, as well as community, as well as media. God, you did it. And then you held all of the way today. God bless you. Make sure you get something you hey, share this message, live this message, promote this message, and be the change and the message. We love you. On behalf of No More Dirty, all the affiliates, all of our friends, WJAB, No More Dirty Radio Show, man, we got the judge in the building, we got Dr. Hobbs, Huntsville Housing, and also that's my homie from that's my homie, my mentor, and to all of our fathers, Roger, Martin, to everybody, Pastor Will, and all the pastors that came through. God bless you, Marcus Sims. I think I got it, and most importantly, to our citizens, that is you. That is you. And our volunteers, and also shout out to my man, No More Dirty, the whole crew, DJ Scissorhand, Erica, and then also we want to say a big shout out to my man Joaquin, and then my homie man from CLC, your boy, the DJ. Boy. All right, God bless. Have a good one. Peace.